can I say? I mean, here all day, the vibe, and hearing it yesterday and today, and you allowing me to hear two more tracks as I've been finished. This adventure, has it been an adventure?
It's been a very brief, spontaneous, crazy adventure. I can't remember the last time we made a record like this. You know, every time we go into the studio, we sort of prepare ourselves for these elongated stretches, and you know, 4 weeks ago, none of this existed. We made the decision over the course of the summer to make this record this fall, and over the course of the summer, while we were on tour, we were sort of throwing ideas back and forth at each other about what songs to play and so on. But we played the last show of the tour in San Diego on September 13th, and we forgot to take any days off, so the next day we met over at Kirk's house.
I know, he's sitting in the basement.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
We met over in Kirk's basement, and we sort of sat there with our instruments and went, okay, now what? And we started basically going through potential songs that we had thrown at each other during sort of, you know, late night drinking binges in hotel rooms and whatever, and sitting on the plane and blah, blah, blah. And we had a sort of a rough outline of some songs that we thought could work for this project. And that was just about 4 weeks ago. We spent almost a week over at Kirk's house, sort of getting it together, figuring out what we're doing. And then we came here, and having recorded and mixed 11 songs in that period, for us is just sort of unimaginable.
When we first started as Metallica, we didn't have any of our own songs. We were playing cover songs from these more obscure kind of British metal bands that no one in California knew. So we had instantly had a set list.
Right.
We played them. We didn't tell them they weren't us.
So who were you playing back then? Who were you playing?
Well, we were playing Diamond Head, a lot of Diamond Head stuff. This band called Sweet Savage, another band just called Savage, Blitzkrieg. And slowly we started writing our own songs and kind of replaced the covers with our own. And when we first got Jason in the band, that was a good way to kind of break him in, you know, get in the studio, and instead of trying to write songs with him and all this really heavy kind of vibe, just play some cover songs and get a good feeling going. And so that first Garage Days really worked well. We took it off the market with the idea of doing this exact thing one day.
Right.
You know, adding to it and taking all the B-side stuff that people don't get in every country, you know. So it's a good collection.
The whole idea about the project, if you generalize, is that because of the nature of our own records, the sort of how we write these songs and then spend sort of like a year recording them and going over every single detail with a, you know, just a fine comb, and sitting there and analyzing everything. What we need all the time and have throughout a career is a project like this to balance the sort of silly ways that we record our own material. We could never be this I don't think we could ever be this instinctive and this spontaneous about. And plus, you have to remember that all the songs, all the lyrics, everything is written. So
that's
what you
Bob
do.
said, but the thing is that you have stamped the Metallica thing on it. You've the rearrangements, the sounds. I mean,
but that
the
comes.
Nick Cave track. I mean, Loverman. I'm harping on that one because it's so. If someone had said to me, "You'd be recording a Nick Cave song," I would have said Metallica. Oh, don't be so silly, you know.
I think that's what's so cool about Metallica doing cover songs. That is, it gives us a chance to go in the studio and have a different kind of fun than the sort of process of making our own records. And at the same time, I think now we're at the point in our career where when we used to pick cover songs and record cover songs in the early days, we would sort of stay more within our own territory, our own parameters, and sort of pick all these sort of obscure British metal songs and so on. But now we realized with this project that we could be, and want it to be, a lot more adventurous in the selection, and for the first time also picking songs by artists that we tremendously respect, but that we could also take these songs and kind of alter them enough and make them our own. And I think that if you think of the territory that we cover between Discharge and the Misfits and Merciful Fate and Diamond Head, all the way over to Bob Seger
is
and Nick Cave and and Old Thin Lizzy.
Thin Lizzy, yeah.
Yeah, and kind of how I think when you listen to these songs,
And Leonard Skinner.
yeah, and Skinner, yeah, and when you listen to these songs as a bunch, that they all work in their own ways because we're comfortable playing them. We admire and respect the songs. We admire and respect the artists, and it's the key thing for us is that we have to be comfortable playing these songs, and when we're comfortable with something, we can make almost anything, no matter how foreign it is, at least on paper, sound like Metallica, if we're comfortable with it, you know?
You a Bob Seger fan, I mean?
Actually, I can't stand Bob Seger, and I've never met him, so nothing really against him, but every time, you know, growing up, the radio, just take them old records off the shelf. That's all I ever heard on the radio. It was like, you know, play some, you know, Aerosmith or something, you know. I would just turn the radio off. It would just drive me up the wall. But it was more the song. This song, and lyrically especially, it belonged to Metallica. Just, you know, on the road again. It's just, we're the road dogs, and that's one song that we can really relate to. And it came out really well.
Well, I mean, hearing it yesterday, and thinking, right, turn the page, Bob Seger. Now this will be interesting. But you really have given it the Metallica stamp, but it also holds its uniqueness as well, you know?
Well, there's some of these songs, you choose a song because you like it. You don't really analyze why, but you know, that song is vocal melody. It's, you know, purely the vocal melody carries that whole song.
As with most things, the key element is always the music, and I felt that we could do that music justice, and because that music we've been such fans of that music and so greatly inspired us. And I would say that of all the things we've undertaken on this project, it was probably the thing that surprised me the most in its degree of difficulty for us to nail, because one thing is being a fan of some music or a fan of a band and listening to it from a fan's perspective. Another thing is sitting down and listening to a song with the idea of trying to play that and do it justice.
The only reason we're doing these songs is because we like the bands, we like the songs. There was something about them that hit us, you know, when we were growing up, or you know, actually, you know, being sponges with music. They're really these bands that have helped molded Metallica.
When I think back to those days, when we started out, I mean, Metallica started life literally as a cover band.
Cover band,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, we started life as a cover band. I was sitting in Los Angeles. This tennis thing that I was attempting was sort of dwindling away, and I was sitting listening to all these English heavy metal records every day in my bedroom in Los Angeles after we had moved there for me to try and pursue this tennis career. And I was sitting there sort of going, you know, doing air drums and stuff like that, going, you know what, it could be really fun to do this myself. I never had any aspirations about writing songs, about recording records, about touring or anything like that. I just thought it'd be really fun to sort of get together every day with a bunch of guys, get totally drunk, and just sit and play like Diamond Head and Saxon songs all night. It's like that was the extent of the dream.
Denmark, way back, has always been notorious for loving heavy rock metal. I mean, way back, you know. Has he ever talked to you about that, of what he liked?
Oh yeah, his first gig, yeah, whatever, in, you know, 18, 16, when he went to go see Deep Purple, you know. His dad put him in the little papoose and took him to the show or whatever it was. That was his first show, was Deep Purple, and you know, I think from right there it was like he wanted to be a drummer, you know, and Pots and Pans came out at home. So yeah, Denmark had some heavier stuff.
Yeah.
But when I met Lars, that was it, you know. I thought I knew all the heavy music there was until I went and saw his record collection. Man, you're one spoiled kid, man. He had just a huge collection. Yeah. And I would just have these blank cassettes and spend days at his house just taping all of these bands I'd never heard of that, you know, had cool covers, or, oh, that's ugly and scary, yeah, I'd record them. So yeah, he introduced me to a lot of that stuff that he brought over.
There was one record store that was sort of my mecca. There was a guy named Ken Anthony, who will forever be dear in my heart. And he was the guy in charge of the sort of the rock department at this place. And he was so keen on just finding and seeking things out. And he would get all these like bands in from Canada, like Moxie and Harlequin and Street Heart and all these things. And he'd get these things in from Australia, like Cold Chisel and, you know, even like bands like Heaven and all these, you remember Heaven, of course, and obviously the Tats and so on. I mean, obviously AC/DC were sort of very well known, but all these other things would come, and, you know, the early versions of in America they were called Angel City, but the Angels and so on, and getting all those bands in and stuff like that. And
so you really are a great fan of music, aren't you?
Yeah, I pretty much, he really was the one. I would go in and see him like 3-4 times a week, and I went to school every day, and then I would have a job delivering newspapers for a couple of the hours in the afternoon, and then I would go play some tennis, because that was what I was really into, and then I would go in and see this guy in this record store, and he was the one that sort of, I'd walk in there and in, you know, the spring of 1980 and go, look at this band that just came, this single or whatever just came from England, you know, some band like Iron Maiden, or check out, here's this band, you know, he was the one that really sort of turned me on to all this stuff. So I was very lucky to have a person who was as an avid record collector himself, because he always got, you know, he would get sort of, you know, 3 copies of the White Spirit album, and he would take one and I would take one, and then the third one would sit on the shelves for like 3 months or something, because nobody had any idea what this was. But he really was the one that sort of helped me out a lot with getting access to all these things.
In part, where things would dominate, be it sort of the drums, the guitars, your vocals, the mixing. I mean, was there tense time in the mixing?
If there's not a tense time, then something's wrong.
Right.
We have to argue. That's just part of the process. You know, we'll talk about, you know, this is going to be easy. We're just going to throw the stuff up. You know, the bed tracks, everything sounded really good. And then we'll get in there, and you know, the kick drum's got to come up, and okay, now the vocals, and you start butting heads, but you know, we do kind of step on each other's toes. He'll talk about, wow, what's that guitar sound like? And I'll be saying, you know, add some more room of the drums. And at the end of the day, we're trying to get it to sound as good as possible, and huge and fat. It takes a few arguments, you know, and we've been at it for 17 years, and we haven't drawn blood yet, so no stretchers or, you know, ambulances have shown up, so it's okay.
Actually, the way I work, and I think as a person, which is probably relevant to this project, is that I have a tendency, my extremes are a lot probably, you know, further out than the rest of them. So when we're making our own Metallica records, I'm the one that's probably the most anal and sit there and really go through everything in detail. What I was keen on with this project was trying to go as far in the opposite direction as possible, and there were some things when we were recording stuff off the floor in this very room about 2-3 weeks ago, where it was like, hey, wait a minute, that sounds great as is, just the 4 of us off the floor or whatever, let's just leave it. And then I get kind of into a situation where one of the other guys, well, I just want to change a couple of my guitar things, or James wanted to re-sing some vocals or whatever. So I have a tendency to kind of swing more sort of extreme than the other guys, and I was quite keen on trying to preserve the moments that were created in this room instead of then sitting and sort of doctoring them up afterwards. But at the same time, I mean, making records and being in a band and choosing songs and recording songs and all that, it's really, I mean, the key thing is balance, and you have to find the balance that works within the unit. And I think we found that, and the fact that you said that we could sit here 3 weeks later and actually have a finished record is an amazing feat in itself.
My name is Randy Staub, and I'm the recording engineer on the album, and I'm mixing one of the songs.
What do you add to the Metallica sounds?
Well, hopefully I make it sound the way they envision in their head, you know, make it sound really good and have all the parts there that they, you know, the way they like to hear it.
It's hard to work with Metallica?
It's not too hard. It's a lot of hours, but you know, it's pretty good. They're nice guys.
Tension's good for Metallica. We work good with that. You know, there's a calendar sitting in the other room that, you know, the X's are going off. You know, you got 10 more days, and that's really good for us. So that kind of steps us up a little, you know, kicks us in the ass a little bit. But as far as doing the drum tracks, it went a lot quicker. What I loved about this is we actually got a song, you know, actually 2 drum tracks in one day, you know, shock horror, and go in and recut, you know, fix some bass stuff up, go in there, fix a few guitar things, and then, you know, the thing's ready to sing. That was a lot of fun, working on it one song at a time instead of, you know, load and reload. We went in and cut, you know, whatever it was, 30 drum tracks at one time, and by the end of that, you'd forgotten, you know, what the song meant or, you know, what you were doing. So it's really cool to work on it one song at a time.
Now, touring-wise,
Yeah.
this to every one of you. I know it's an ugly word, but
It's a word that we're very used to. Metallica does tour here and there. We've got to go to South America. We haven't been there on the Load or Reload tour. We're going to hit down there. We got a little project coming up the beginning of next year that's kind of a surprise and really fun that I think hasn't been done, at least from a hard rock type metal band.
now, mystery project next year. Well, sort of mystery.
Everybody's just been grilling me about this. We're gonna undertake a project in April of next year that I can't give it away yet because we're just sort of going to announce it at a more appropriate time. And every interview I've done the last couple of months have asked me, and it wouldn't be fair to all the other 50 guys I've told, you're going to have to wait a couple of months. I mean, I'd love to break it to you, but, you know, and you know what? It's not anything sort of tremendously earth-shattering. It's something that's been done before by other artists and stuff like that, but it's a project that we have wanted to do for many years, and it's a project that it's just falling into place in terms of the right time.
After that, we're going to start writing the next record, and we're going to hit South America, and then possibly some European festivals in the summertime. Then hopefully we got to get some more tunes out. We want to keep this thing rolling. Getting more tunes out in a shorter amount of time. It's already been, you know, since we wrote Load and Reload, you know, about 3 years or more. So there's some, you know, it's already starting to backlog some of this, some of the riffs and ideas.
What I was amazed when you toured Australia earlier this year, of how you all seem to enjoy yourselves so much on stage, and that audience. I mean, I saw it in Melbourne, I saw it in Sydney. Were just going off, you know, and they knew every song, all the new songs. They knew everything, you know.
That does make you feel good when you're up there singing and they know your stuff. Yeah.
Did you feel that? I mean,
oh, absolutely, absolutely. They really know how to let loose down there, and we love that. We got to play. Yeah, we get a good vibe, get a good feeling down there. We really dig it. And I kind of wish it was a little closer, but maybe that's why it's so cool. It's so far away.